Hello, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Before we begin the webinar proper, I would just like to highlight a few courtesy points. So, first off, the information in this webinar is intended to provide as general information and is not conveying of any legal or any business or advice. All efforts have been taken to ensure that information provided in this webinar is as accurate as of the publication date. The organizers and speakers reserve all the rights to the materials provided. And lastly, this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the SPF's YouTube channel and will be sent to you after the webinar is done. Of course, you will also be muted by default for the duration of the webinar, but please, this doesn't mean you cannot interact. We are encouraged to interact with our panelists and speakers through the chat as well as the Q&A box found below. Yep. Maybe we can just start the webinar proper. So, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to join me at the Frontiers of Europe FinTech Opportunities in Central and Eastern Europe webinar. We have a distinguished panel of speakers and guests today, and I'm so excited to welcome them to this event. So what you see here is the program lineup that we have here for today. First, we'll start off by an opening remarks by Mr. Ray Kwan, Director of SPF Global Division 3, taking care of the AMEA region. Next, we will have an overview of the Central and Eastern Europe landscape for FinTech, presented by Mr. Peter Sassi, President of the Central and Eastern European Chamber of Commerce. And then afterwards, we'll have a view from Singapore side, so FinTech landscape and opportunities in Singapore, by Mr. Soli Ahmad, Lead of Subcommittees at Singapore FinTech Associations. So after we've gotten a good view, a good broad view of the topic and the regions, we'll dive a little bit deeper into the companies that are actually driving the charge, right? So the first, we'll have 5 companies presenting on the best practices over there at Central and Eastern Europe. There'll be Verestro, Xelem, FinShape, Resistant AI, and oh, no, actually, I think Modex could not make it today for unforeseen circumstances. And afterwards, we'll have a more interactive portion where we have a panel discussion on overcoming key challenges in FinTech in Central Eastern Europe. There, we'll have Bleek from Poland, Festipay, and MDEC from Singapore. And this will be moderated by Mr. Peter Sassi, who also runs a FinTech company. So for now, before we begin, I would just like to do a quick introduction of Global Connect at SPF. The Frontier of Europe series of webinar is brought to you by Global Connect at SPF by Singapore Business Federation, and it's co-organized by the Central and Eastern European Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Polish Investment and Trade Agency. In partnership with Enterprise Singapore, Global Connect at SPF has been set up to assist Singapore enterprises that are looking to internationalize for the first time, as well as enterprises that are expanding and deepening their presence in overseas markets. As you can see, we have 3 pillars in Global Connect SPF: learn, land, localize. Learn is something that we're here to do today, learning about new market for some of us in Central and Eastern Europe in FinTech. Or you can also have other webinars in our series. You can check it out on the SPF website, such as on other markets as well as on free trade agreements. Once you're ready, and you want to be connected to relevant partners in the markets, then we can help to land and localize. I am Minted. I'm the market specialist for Europe here at Global Connect SPF, and I'm very excited to share about Central Eastern Europe market today. And after this webinar, I think you will understand why as well. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Ray Kwan, Director, AMEA Global Division 3 of Singapore Business Federation, to give his opening remarks. Ray, please.
Thank you, Minchad. Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to our multi-country Europe webinar exploring the fast-growing markets of Central and Eastern Europe. Before I carry on, I just want to apologize a little bit. I'm a little bit under the weather. I caught a cold a few days ago, and I'm just trying to recover from that. So today's webinar, FinTech Opportunities in Central and Eastern Europe, is an initiative by Global Connect at SPF, right, co-organized by the Central and Eastern European Chamber of Commerce, and the Polish Investment and Trade Agency, right? Essentially to introduce one of the fastest growing regions in Europe and a very relevant topic of moving businesses and the very way we work to the digital realm. Fintech has been a hot button topic in recent years due to the growth of online shopping, move towards cashless payments, and growing needs of businesses in real-time payments, even at brick-and-mortar businesses, further accelerated by COVID. While Singapore has been doing well with fintech in the APAC region, Central and Eastern European fintech companies have been making waves on the other side of the world. So today, we have the chance to not only hear from the exciting markets of Central and Eastern Europe, but also to hear from how leading companies have led the charge on the fintech movement. We will also have a chance to discuss on the challenges and opportunities in this space in the panel discussions. Webinar participants, you are encouraged to engage our panelists. Please do put in your questions in the Q&A and we'll have them answered. We have Peter from Central and Eastern European Chamber of Commerce, as well as Solin from Singapore FinTech Association to share about the state of fintech and perhaps share some insights and opportunities from CEEC and Singapore's perspective, respectively. Well, financial transactions is one of the key foundations for businesses, especially in this age where cross-border and online transactions are on the rise. With the increase in use, right, the sophistication of the processes have also increased. This has subsequently resulted in an expanded and more complex value chain that not only involves traditional financial segments like payments, lending, and trading, but also an ecosystem of service providers, infrastructure providers, accelerators, and more. This has made fintech even more vibrant than before. Before we proceed to the program today, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to all partners for this webinar. Today's webinar would not be possible without the strong support of our co-organizers, the Central and Eastern European Chamber of Commerce, the Polish Invest and Trade Agency, our supporting partners, the Embassy of Hungary, the Embassy of Romania, the Embassy of Lithuania, Czech Invest, Singapore FinTech Association, as well as SG Tech. Of course, not to mention all our distinguished speakers and panelists from leading companies from Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic, Romania, and Lithuania. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I wish you a good webinar ahead.
Thank you so much, Brave. Well, next, if I may invite Mr. Peter Sasi, President of Central and Eastern European Chamber of Commerce, who is also a veteran in the fintech space, to share a bit more about the fintech landscape and opportunities in Central and Eastern Europe. Peter, please. You're muted, Peter.
No. Oh, I'm so sorry. So again, hello everyone. Thanks for joining this webinar, and I hope you will enjoy it. So to tell the truth, I'm actually from Central and Eastern Europe, and I am working in Singapore for several years now. So what I will try to present to you is kind of a comparative analysis on the two regions and how obviously we see it currently, but this is an evolving situation. So basically, of course, fintech is a new industry in the sense that we are trying to discuss it. It's technology for financial services. Basically, it's also a buzzword together with a lot of sub buzzwords like insurtech and trade tech and pay tech and so on. So basically, what I am talking about now is the latest fintech since 2008 and not the old school fintech. Even in this, we have several different parts of fintech. So basically, there are so many areas. I know that in this current presentation, somehow we ended up having multiple pay tech participants. So we will go into that one. But of course, there are an unlimited number of different fintech companies in this space. But how we like to structure the whole thing is basically there are the guys who are genuine innovation, the real fintech, who came up with a new idea how to do things differently. And you can see a few of these representatives in this current conversation. And then, of course, there are resellers who are just repackaging services of an already existing financial service provider like microlending or factoring resellers. And then there is also the category of embedded fintech. Obviously, Google has it, Apple has it, Uber is also doing it, Grab, Gojek in this region, or WeBank in China, in Europe. A lot of utility companies are also into this one. And then, of course, there are the pure players who try to cover the whole digital banking. And also the plugin service providers who are kind of staying behind existing traditional financial institutions, and this is really the big difference. So, and this will come down to, in the end, to my final conclusion. So you see, some of the guys are coming up with a direct new product and going directly to the customers, and other guys are working together with traditional providers or staying behind and white labeling for traditional providers. And then, of course, the big guys can embed the fintech technologies into their existing other kind of services. And of course, there are other kinds of dimensions of fintech as well. So based on the technology that is being used, or based on being the traditional fintech, like everything else, and there is the crypto fintech, which mostly exists on smart contracts in the crypto world, and distributed ledger technology. So there are so many different dimensions, and of course, this is also, as I said, it's still shaping up, including the regulations, and there are lots of pain points in this one as well. So practically, a biggest part of the competitive advantage of the fintech is coming down to the fact that they have much less regulatory requirements than the banks do. So that's why they can be more profitable in many areas. Of course, on the other side, it's also holding them back in a few places, and also taking away customer trust, because there are many failing fintechs, there are data breaches, and so on. And of course, a lot of things are shaping fintech. So one of them was hopefully COVID, which did force us to do a lot more things online. Already mentioned embedded finance is a big shaper as well. DLT, distributed ledger technology, is actually getting from a buzzword and a nice idea to be a production deployed technology. And finally, co-petition, which is actually, I think, where it is heading. And of course, finally, we have a little bit of greener fintech, greener AI, where we start thinking about that all the technology that we use, all the machine learning, using up a lot of power, how can we optimize it for lower carbon footprint? Market size, you will get the slides, so I included much more slides than what I can present here. So basically, what the initial reaction of the traditional financial institutions was to fintech is that they are going to die by 1,000 cuts, because the fintechs are going to take away the best performing, low-hanging fruits of the financial services, because they don't have the legacy, they don't have the compliance burdens, and they can this way achieve a much better price and technology. And the other way around, of course, the fintechs don't have the huge access to a customer base, an all-around set of services that most banks provide, and also they have a lot less customer trust, and also in many cases, even in case of larger providers, a lot more rudimentary customer service than the traditional banks. So there are arguments pro and contra as well, and that's why I think, and this is where I was heading with the whole presentation, I think that the fintech is a constant convergence from both sides, to compliance, to working together, but also competing. So I think, and this is already happening, that a lot of fintech companies are going to integrate more and more with the traditional players, either in white labeling or in other arrangements. But this is already happening, and I hope that this will actually benefit, basically take out all the negative parts of both sides and provide the customers in the end with better financial services. So I'm not taking questions right now because we will only do that at the end in the panel discussion, and handing over already to the FinTech subcommittee lead from the Singapore FinTech Association.
Thank you so much, Peter. I think you covered quite a lot of very interesting points. One is that of how fintech companies don't have the legacy and compliance burden, so as how all these technologies, like distributed ledger technology, AI, ML, have actually allowed this boom in fintech to happen, right? And I think the part about co-opetition, I think that was very interesting. It's like you're competing with the financial institution, but also cooperating at the same time, right? Okay, for participants, just like to bring your attention to a poll that will be on the screen right now. Please take a look. Just now, I didn't get a chance to introduce the Central Eastern European Chamber of Commerce, but CEC is an institution for both individuals and companies to connect, develop, and strengthen business interests and opportunities. So between CE and Singapore. So if the sharing today, any parts of it really resonates with you and guys be a part of that community, you can please vote a yes on this, and we'll put you in touch with the right parties. Take a bit of time to do that. While I do a bit of introduction on our next speaker, now that we've heard about the landscape in the CE region, let's hear about how things are doing over here on our shore in Singapore side. Our next speaker is Mr. Soli Ahmad, Subcommittee Lead at Singapore FinTech Association. Singapore FinTech Association is a cross-industry, non-profit initiative intended to be a platform designed to facilitate collaboration between all market participants and stakeholders in the FinTech ecosystem. As you mentioned, ecosystem is one of the big factors that's in play in FinTech today. SFA aims to be an effective platform for members to engage with multiple stakeholders to find solutions to the issues. But you know what? I think Soli will do a much better job at that than me. So Soli, without further ado, please.
Thank you, Min, and thank you, Peter, for giving that insightful sharing earlier. And I totally agree that co-opetition is the word here for global fintech marketplaces. So greetings, distinguished panelists, and a great pleasure to all who are joining us online. And also thank you to the organizer, Global Connect at SBF, along with friends who are joining in here today. So I'm Soleh, and I lead programs for our corporate members and also subcommittees at the Singapore FinTech Association. So I was listening to Peter's sharing about, the fruition of FinTech developments in the market. I could excitedly recall, because I was shuttling between our market here in Singapore and also in the CE as well. And I find that there's a vibrant pool of people employed servicing FinTechs, TechFin, or even the tech service industries as well in those regions. So the richness of diversity and potential is something I would like to relate here in Southeast Asia, which is a home to 600 million and a growing base of digital-first citizens, with more than half of our populations below the age of 30. So last year, Singapore FinTech Association ran a FinTech in ASEAN 2021 report, co-authored by UOB and PwC. So this report focuses on the ASEAN 6 markets, namely Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam. So some of the insight that I would just brief and I'm excited to share with you. This is an acceleration of digital adoption, especially due to the context of COVID-19 pandemic. So as we have seen Southeast Asian FinTech investment sectors, we have seen a strong rebound in 2021. And in fact, it exceeded pre-pandemic levels. So the COVID-19 pandemic accelerated digital adoption, and in tandem, provided demand for focused offerings in digital services, digital finance services, and embedded financial solutions. Another thing that we found out was that funding. So funding hits a historic high, and something that we are probably going to see in the coming months and year ahead So it's driven by mega rounds worth more than 100 million and above. And this also led to the increase of average deal sizes. So in fact, recently last week, we have seen Indonesian unicorn, right, send it back Series D funding. And another example is that in Southeast Asia, where largest SME digital financing platform, Funding Societies, also have raised more than 100 million in their Series C equity round back in February. So this shows there are more and more fintechs carrying this trend throughout this year, and we are bound to see more of that. Okay. Right, going on. So with that, there's slowing growth in the number of fintech firms, but this is not something that is negative. In fact, it's also a sense of maturity in the market, where late-stage companies, Series C and above, attracting more investments. So this suggests that investors are more cautious and risk-averse due to the economic concerns, after the whole prolonged pandemic and possibly with the uncertainties lying ahead. As such, investors have also chosen to invest more towards mature fintechs in this market, as it will be deemed to be more resilient. Alternative lending space and crypto firms are also catching up. So from our findings in Singapore, crypto firms actually came on top in its share of its share in the report, where 25% of total fintech firms are attributed to this sector in the market, while in Thailand, alternative lending firms, in fact, stood about more than 20%. So as we see more wider adoption and acceptance in the region, so we can expect some dominance and share of cryptocurrency firms growing in this market. Moving on, talking about Singapore a little bit. Singapore has always been ambitious in developing itself as one of the fintech hubs of the world. So we have a very strong forward-looking regulatory framework. We also foster growth and innovation in the whole region. So according to another report by KPMG, Pulse of FinTech report last year, Singapore had a bumper year of 2021 where we have recorded a 5-year high, where the city-state have seen fintech investments have accounted for half of the cumulative fintech funding in ASEAN. So that punches well above the weight, and this continues to lead in the fintech funding rounds, where Singapore is accounting for more of the funding and investment in this region. So despite its minuscule size, it's still the springboard to the region. So Singapore is seen as the market to enter to access the rest of the region. And another notable market that we have here is Indonesia, where a lot of our investments are being focused in this market. So some of the trending developments around in Singapore. So aside from touching on growth, as we spoke earlier, so there's a projection of thrust into sustainability. So that's one of the key focus areas, you can say, where ESG remains a top agenda in the country. We have recently, launched Project Greenprint. So its key aim is to address challenges in the green finance space. And as well as also about a year or two ago, so we had the launch of the Blockchain Innovation Program to facilitate the development, commercialization, and adoption of blockchain technology. And interestingly, there's also a report going about where Singapore has been taking the top spot in the percentage of CEOs being held by women. So that's also great news in terms of diversity in the tech region, in the tech space. A little bit more about SFA, as Min had introduced earlier. So we are the conduit for the market industry players and also the regulators, along with government and agencies in the space. So we bring everyone together to achieve this singular vision of strengthening Singapore's position as the fintech hub of the world. So some of our goals is to increase members' chances of success and also to bring and elevate Singapore's position as the fintech hub. There are two types of memberships that we have. So corporate and individual memberships. This is something I won't go through it too deeply, but rather it'll be interesting to share more about our subcommittees as well. And within so, some of our efforts include knowing our industry, where networking members are able to meet, foster new partnerships with other members who are in this fintech space. We host industry roundtables and also knowledge and thought leadership. We strengthen their businesses through giving of certifications, fintech certifications, access to grants, mentorship, as well as hosting Singapore Pavilion at the premier event, the Singapore Fintech Festival at the end of the year. And lastly, we also try an endeavor where we can grow the businesses of our members through trade missions, understanding other markets outside of Singapore. So we have 10 subcommittees. So these subcommittees are subverticals within the fintech space. And this is something that really exciting because we have just added Web3 and wealth tech into the subverticals here to reflect the growing depth and spectrum of fintechs in this space. So there are initiatives that we are running, which is to also bridge, and increasingly so we find that fintech should also exist outside the fin realm, where we can also introduce solutions of our members to other cross-industry and enterprises. I won't go too much deeply into this. Yeah, so I would like to touch more on the Fintech Festival. So as probably a lot of you will be familiar with the Fintech Festival. So it will be hosted at the end of the year, and is to curate and host content where it brings people together from all across the world, and also to see what Singapore and also our global partners can do in this space, and host innovations, talks, and also to spread thought leadership across. We also have the Global FinTech Awards, where we recognize industry leaders and also individuals. Aside from that, as I mentioned and alluded earlier, so we do certification of fintechs. We don't think we are the entrusted body to certify, but again, a lot of the members are in the upstarts or the enterprise stage. So for startups, this is really useful in a way to be connected to a fraternity of fintechs in Singapore. Other than that, we have other industry activities. So at the end of this year, we are concluding a framework for the buy now, pay later industry in Singapore with a code of conduct. And we're also working on Veritas AI, which is also an AI framework to help the fintech landscape here. We do a little bit of training to support the talent development in this space and also mentorship. So pretty much that is all that we have here to share. Thank you so much for your time. Passing back on to Min.
Thank you so much, Ole, for the insightful sharing. Yeah, I think the funding, this record that we've seen so far, as well as the regulatory framework that's favorable, really seems to set a good stage for fintech to bloom over here in this region, doesn't it? And I realized that there's a few keywords that do keep popping up, such as embedded FI as well as Web 3.0. Maybe we can discuss that a little bit, So anybody in the audience, if you've got any insights on that, please do and questions on that, feel free to share that as well. So participants, once again, we have the poll. If you'd like to be connected to SFA, Singapore FinTech Association, please just click yes on the poll that should be popping up on your screen right now. Okay, while you're doing that, next, now that we have heard from the two experts on a more broad view of the fintech landscape, maybe let's hear from the companies that are leading the charge on the ground. First, we have Verestro from Poland and a head of sales, Tomas, Resistant AI from Czech Republic and a head of BD in CEE and APAC, Jiri, FinShape from Hungary and a regional director for APAC, Fabian, Selim, also from Hungary, and a director for R&D, Zoltan. You know what? Instead of me doing the introduction, I'll let the expert do the introductions instead. First, we'll pass the control over to Tomas of Verestro. Tomas, please.
Thank you, Min. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Tomasz Kupka. I'm responsible for sales in our company in Verestro. Actually, I can't change the screen. Yeah, apologies. Sorry, I had trouble with the screen. Verestro is a fintech company that actually serves other fintechs and all the other players that are entering the financial area. So what we do as a company is we are creating a unique platform for API orchestration that we can simply provide to other players from the financial area as a fintech as service model. The restaurant comes from Poland. We are based in Warsaw. However, we do have a couple of other locations around the world as we are growing quite rapidly, and we are entering new markets basically every single week. We are coming from Warsaw. We've been very largely focusing on Central Europe in our first years of growth, and then we sort of naturally started working in Middle East, Southeast Asia, United States, and now Latin America. Southeast Asia is a very particular area for us because for our main partner, Mastercard, this is one of the areas of focus. So we've entered the let's say in geographical terms, we've entered this area back in 2017, and we've started a very close cooperation with Mastercard and Visa. What we do with those two companies, we basically take the technology of those two partners, those two large financial technology companies, and we translate those APIs to simplified version for our customers. And those are banks, those are merchants, those are fintechs, those are mobile network operators, and those are all the other new players that excuse me, that are entering financial area. Basically, with all of those APIs, we are covering many different areas of interest, starting with card issuance and onboarding of the customers, through loyalty, through card controls, digital card issuance, digital first, building white label applications and mobile applications, ending up with very customized solutions that are per customer. This to be said, we are brand agnostic in terms of cooperation with Visa and Mastercard. However, due to our growth, due to our capabilities, Mastercard saw us as a valuable company, and they invested in Verestro back in 2020. This helps us very much in our growth, and this helps us refocus our attention on certain key markets that are prime markets for Mastercard, especially in Southeast Asia. Right now, we are present in Singapore, Thailand, and India with various types of projects. And we have a small team located in Thailand that supports those local implementations and local projects. Now we are also very much on a path to hire a first local team in Singapore. And let me jump directly. I'm sorry. Let me jump directly to various cases that probably will explain a little bit better what we actually do on the ground for various customers, especially in Southeast Asia. So over here you have four different implementations for different products that Verestro implemented in Southeast Asia with various types of customers, and those are probably some of the most recognizable brands from the region: Grab, Shopee, Mastercard, RBL Bank from India, Those are some of the customers that we are very happy to work with, and we are able to disclose. And over here we have provided solutions that are ranging from digital first wallets, MCPP, NFC tokenization services, card and bank account tokenization services, and also we've built the digital first mobile app wallet that is basically globally accessible, called Quico. It's also available in Southeast Asia. So based on those couple of examples, you can imagine that to customers all over the world. And again, this is just a first step for us. We are very happy to be in conversations with multiple other partners in the region, and we are looking forward to further growth in the region. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Tomas. All right, next we have, Next we have Resistant AI from Czech Republic. So Jiri, please take it away.
Yes, thank you for the introduction. My name is Jiří. I head business development at Resistant AI, and here I will be briefly touching on the subject of identity and document forensics, which we deal with, where we apply AI and machine learning mostly for banking, for lending, payments, insurance. So in general, we work with fintechs and financial institutions. And this approach we are applying in order to prevent fraud and increase automation in those institutions. So just a bit of a intro of the company. Although the company was established 3 years ago, as the core team has been working for, 16 years now in the field of AI, first fighting cybercrime and now financial crime. And the core team in the Resistant AI team is, we have 9 PhDs in AI, so a very technical team. And we are backed by some of the largest investors in the world, including Index Ventures, Google Ventures, and Credo Ventures. And on the right-hand side, there's just a snapshot of some of our larger European customers, where Twisto is buy now, pay later, Payoneer is payments, Moneta is bank, KBC banking and insurance, and the rest are pretty much lending and mortgages, and PwC is one of our large partners. So as just a brief introduction of some of the biggest pain points that we solve, we usually go after minimizing fraud, minimizing false positives, which are a plague of the new systems which rely on automation, whether that is in fraud or AML or any type of scoring. This is where we come in to very improve the precision of these systems. And primarily we detect forgery on documents, on any digital documents, and I will come into that. So just as a introduction of the whole of the layers that we use in the field of identity forensics. So to be very let's say practical about this. First layer, we come into play where a document is being validated. So we validate any type of document for customer onboarding, for any type of scoring. So whether that is an ID, whether that is a bank statement or an invoice, and whether that is a image or a PDF or a scan, we validate that document and say whether that is a legit document or whether that document has been modified in any way. The next layer we call serial forgery detection, and there we are able to not only look at one document, but we can compare all the documents across the portfolio or the workflows of the customer, and we can then identify documents which come from the same source but claim to be different. So we match them based on visual structure, and we can spot patterns of serial fraud. This third layer is a serial onboarding fraud, where a customer or a fraudster would be claiming several different identities and registering or onboarding as several different people, but we would catch them because they are coming from the same device, the same IP, or having very similar patterns in terms of their behavior. I'll share more examples in a little bit, but the rest is identity clustering and transaction monitoring, and all those come into play mostly in terms of AML, where we help as well to cluster the regular and legitimate behavior of customers, and we single out the anomalies and behaviors and identities that are fraudulent or money launderers. So now I will just briefly use some examples in terms of documents, and starting with our out-of-the-box forgery detection. So this is exactly what it looks like. As I said, in onboarding, in scoring of customers, whenever digital documents come into play, we give a high-level verdict. Here it says high risk. On the right-hand side, this is a snapshot of our UI. So we give a high-level verdict whether that document is legit or fraudulent. And then, because we just don't rely on just black box sort of AI, we also give the full story of what happened with the document, and we show that visually as well. So this is a NatWest bank statement which was modified. So the numbers were changed, the details of the customer were changed. So this is a fraudulent document, and we just we show that out of the box, but we also are able to in time learn more. As we deploy machine learning, we learn more patterns and even further improve the findings and fine tune. Second thing I will show you is the serial forgery attempts. This is when I said we compare the documents, this is what we see a lot all across the world, in Asia primarily, because again, the reliance on digital documents is quite huge. So here you can see how we detect the serial attempts. These two are modified versions of the exactly same ID. So the picture is the same, but the fraudster to get multiple loans or to get through onboarding on multiple identities, they simply changed some of the details digitally of that ID, which you wouldn't be able to recognize that just visually, and you wouldn't be able to connect it other than comparing all the documents that you process, which is what we do. And that's how we discover it. A second way of looking at things is via digital submissions and catching fraud during those. So here we look at things not visually, but we detect anomalies in terms of devices and identities and their behavior. So here, as an example, on the right-hand side, you see two very different and completely different IDs, which were stolen and submitted by the same person. So here, you wouldn't obviously be able to connect these, but because we analyze the devices that the customer used and the behavior on the website and while submitting the documents, we are able to connect these and say, look, these are completely different identities, but they are submitted by the same person who claims to be different people to get different loans or to get through onboarding. So this is how we detect it. And I will just briefly touch on some other things, some other topics that we usually discuss, which is automation, obviously. So here, because we employ machine learning, we are able to not only detect the bad things about documents and the modifications, we are also able to learn how the document is supposed to look like. So that way we are able to automate approvals of documents. So there needs, for certain portion of documents which are authentic and perfectly legit, you don't need to spend time looking and manually reviewing all those documents. These can be processed completely automatically. This is very, very strong, particularly in banking, where with some of the customers, we are able to automate up to 80% of their whole workflow with documents. But that obviously depends case to case. But again, in banking, this is huge, and we employ this everywhere. And one last thing, one last feature that's very handy for financial institutions, particularly in lending, whenever these institutions accept images. So again, pictures of IDs, pictures of payslips, pictures of any sort of documents or scans, we are able to do within the first 3 seconds a quality check where we detect any blurriness, flash reflections, low resolution, or any problems with that document. And this is for one reason. This is because obviously you can't properly read and use OCR for certain things like the name and some of the numbers and figures. But the second and more important reason is that in our experience, when the customer manually and knowingly reduces the quality of the image, it's very often for the reason to hide manipulations with the document and forgery attempts. So that's one of the main reasons, and this is just another feature and they're just another way for us to validate the document. So I will just leave it at this. Again, this has been Resistant AI. The primary concern is for us to prevent fraud and increase automation in financial institutions. So thank you, and we'll be happy to have a chat with anyone.
Thank you so much. I think everybody will agree that KYC AML is one of the big factors in play today. And I think, being able to recognize, documents you've never seen before, I think that's very cool. Next, we have FinShape, and we have Fabian to do this presentation. Fabian, please.
Yeah, thanks, Min. And thank you everyone for the opportunity. My name is Fabian, and I'm the regional director in Asia Pacific, based out of Singapore. So we are FinShape. Our company is specialized in digital banking, and our customers are banks, specifically financial institutions as well, sometimes fintechs. Because what we realized that the banks are really shifting to become more of like tech companies these days, as they should, and it's a really good thing that to see how they evolve and innovation takes place in banking as well. So what we do actually, we're helping them to win this digital race for their customers, because as mentioned earlier several times, the disruption for fintechs is quite significant, and helping not just banks, the traditional players, but others as well, is imperative for us in the region as well. So FinShape is a merger of 2 companies of PSC and WOP. We are 700 strong professionals and employees specialized in digital banking. So all of them are actually very good professionals in that area. We have 100+ banking customers globally. We are present in 4 continents as well. So we are also expanding in Asia as well. So we have customers here in Asia Pacific, but we would like to extend that. So just a few words on what we have. Unfortunately, I cannot go into the details right now because we would stay here the whole day or maybe the week. But in a nutshell, what we really do and what we really have from solution perspective, what we provide is a full-fledged digital solution. So personalized digital banking is what we provide. We have a platform for the digital front end solution that includes mobile, online as well from the channel perspective, and several modules within that, such as onboarding, which was also mentioned earlier, identity checks, loans, applications, and all sort of digital banking related features. We also have a specific personalization solution, which is an AI-powered personalization platform that we use. And we use that platform to actually provide value-added solutions to the digital banking solutions, existing ones to the clients, to our clients, to banks, to differentiate themselves. So Money Stories, Carbon Insight are 2 very good examples of how they can really engage with their customers. Banks, how can they engage with their customers in this in these times, especially after COVID, when the human touch, is sort of missing, and we help to bring it back. So provide them with the clients, the end users, with valuable insights, educate them, provide them relevant offers, services. And also from a carbon insight perspective, we also realized that the ESG and sustainability became actually more and more important. So we provide these insights as well to the clients so that they are aware of their carbon footprint based on their transactions. So in a nutshell, these are the things that we provide. Of course, there's a lot more, and I'm happy to talk about it later on or with any of you. These are just one of our largest clients around the world. You can see big names here. I won't go into the details, but I have brought one specific case study to show you how it is really, how really powerful it is actually to engage with clients in new ways. And that is actually RBI, so Raiffeisen Bank International, which is a giant, banking giant in CEE region, especially. So what we have from them, from the journey perspective, when we started cooperation a few years ago, actually 2 years ago, I think, what the issue was. So the challenge was for these guys that it's a 130-year-old banking giant, really, and they have access to millions of customers that are savvy and digitally empowered, and they have all the tools, and they want those tools, but they couldn't leverage on it. So that was really a challenge for them. Once we helped them and we did this journey together with the RBI, you can see that the growth and conversion through campaigns just skyrocketed. So that was a really, really significant outcome. And of course, the impact, I will talk about some numbers later on, a few slides later, but the most important one, I think, that the technology that we used and provided was able to bring the human touch back into the banking for RBI, so that really they could resonate well with the bank and the messages that they were sending, the personalized messages and the personalized services that were offered. That resonated very well with the clients. And actually, for the bank, it's very important to be able to unlock new opportunities, and that also helped with that. So our collaboration was really boosted it. So just a few, at a glance, RBI and FinShape, how we work together. So the locations and the countries that we work together is, you can see 10 countries there, over 5 million customers that we are, or our solution is actually serving. And the portfolio is quite vast. You see from personal to business, loan, savings, investment products, the whole lot. So we provide the full spectrum. So we cover the full spectrum from a technology perspective. What we really did, and actually that is what matters, is that we just took the data that the bank had. And so banks are usually sitting on a vast amount of data, they just don't know what to do with it or how to, leverage on that one. And then actually we just help them to exploit that information and convert it into a interaction or interactions that really matter to the clients. So these are just some screenshots how engaging it can be for clients, just to provide a few nice information and relevant information to them. The impact in numbers you can see here. I will not read all of these things, but I think for me personally, what I think is most important is the last one, the 96%. So they did a survey after that, and almost everybody that they surveyed from the client base said that the insights that were provided through the digital channels was extremely useful for them, and not just for the financial literacy perspective, but also from a carbon footprint perspective, so that they became aware of the impact their transaction is actually having on the environment. So that was something which was really, really fascinating. So that's obviously just one client and one business case or use case that I brought here today, but I'm more than happy to share. We have more, so I'm happy to share those as well if you're interested. So yeah, that's me. I think you will get those details. So this is what I brought today, and really, again, thank you for the opportunity. Back to you, man.
Thank you so much. Yes, I think the our carbon footprints of our transaction is something that we don't really think about very much. Well, next up, we have Selim from Hungary and Director of R&D, Zoltan, to do the sharing. Zoltan, please.
Thank you. Okay, so Selim is a Hungarian fintech company with more than 20 years of history. And we are working usually with large banks, MNOs, and large retailers. And what we are doing is to provide them technology that helps to do digital transactions in different areas of e-commerce and m-commerce. Yes, as I mentioned, that we have huge history. The company was founded in 2000, and since then we provided different solutions to our partners, and we have a huge experience on digital payments and related functions and features. Our main product is called Selim Mobile Next. Is a payment platform which provides flexibility regarding to the funding sources that customers can use to do payments to merchants and to other entities. We are providing this product in two ways. The one is the classical full-fledged solution. We call this line to Selim Mobile Wallet. While the other one is a plug-and-pay, Selim Plug-and-Pay, which is an SDK-based solution. So our partners can use our SDK to provide different use cases to their customers, to their partners. One important thing is that we are using our own patented technology to protect the sensitive information of payment instruments and other sensitive information, which provides a high security to customers and to our partners as well. As you can see that we are providing support for different kinds of funding sources, from carrier billing till the coupons, vouchers, loyalty points, bank cards, and so on. As I mentioned, we implemented many use cases. As far as I remember, we implemented more than 20 different use cases in different countries, from the mobile top-up to peer-to-peer payments, bill payments, loyalty, and so on. And this product is already 10 years on the market. This is just a few examples of the deployed solutions, but we are focusing now to Southeast Asia because we believe that this region is very appealing for us, because the high penetration of smartphones, the very young population, and not especially in Singapore, but in the neighboring countries, we are looking great market potentials where our technology can be viable and can provide convenient and secure way for customers and merchants for payment, for digital payments. As I mentioned, Selim Mobile Next is a payment platform, but which is developed or designed for the first time to support mobile wallets. But in the meantime, we realized that we should have to expand the supported type of payment. So that's why we are continuously developing the platform. And we are adding more and more services to provide a wide list of available services to merchants and to other partners, which can be useful for them and for their customers as well. One of the latest development is the SoftPOS product. We call it a Smart Merchant Solutions, where we realize that many merchants, especially the micro and small merchants, does not have the opportunity to provide digital payments options to their customers. And that's why we believe that this is the reason why the customers usually pay by cash, which is not just not so convenient, but it's very, very problematic from the point of view of logistics, So the merchants have to carry the cash to the bank and so on. And especially in case of pandemic situation, the cash is not so hygienic and it's not the best way to pay. So that's why we believe that the soft-POS solutions can be a game changer for this size of merchants. So again, this is the micro and small merchants who doesn't have AFT post or cashier machine. They are just selling their products, but they have smartphones, what we can turn into a very innovative and very convenient payment device. The main purpose of this application is to accept bank card payments for NFC cards, but it can be extended to accept any other type of payment instruments as well. For example, e-money payments, loyalty cards, and so on. And we are providing the tap and pin in one solution, which enables the merchants to accept not just small amounts in transactions, but they can accept any size of a payment amount. The process how you can use this payment is quite easily. You just have to enter the amount. The customer has to place her cards close to your phone, and the transaction immediately happens online. And last but not least, we have a very unique technology, which is not very related to the payment or to the fintechs, but it can also be an important technology for fintech companies. This is called motion QR. As you can see on the left side of the screen, this is really a motion QR. Somebody called it a dancing QR, and the technology behind of this QR code enable the partners to exchange much more information than just in a QR code is possible, but without any need of special settings or pairing of the devices and so on. We just have to scan the motion QR, and we can transfer images, biometrics information, voices, and so on. So it can be a very good technology to exchange information, for example, between customer and merchants, or as you can see on this slide, this can be very useful in the health tech area as well. So this is Salom in a nutshell. Thank you for the opportunity. I give back the control.
Thank you so much for the insightful presentation, Zoltan. I think technologies and service providers such as yours are the ones that really makes, like the backbone of this fintech possible. So next up, now that we've heard from all the best practices in the region, let's first have a poll once again if you'd like to be connected to any of our speakers, and it should be appearing on your screen in a moment. So as you're doing that, let me introduce the next round of panelists. Here, now we have another panel of experts that will be discussing the challenges and opportunities in the fintech space. Allow me to introduce the panelists and moderators for today. First, we have Blake from Poland with the Director of International Development, Mr. Piotr. Next, Festipay from Hungary and the CEO, Mr. Daniel. And also we have MDEC from Singapore, the Regional Director of BD, Mr. Jason. And this will be moderated by our keynote speaker previously, Mr. Peter Sassi, who is also a co-founder of MPS, a fintech company himself. So you know what, instead of me, I'll let the moderators and the panelists take it away.
Thank you again. Let's see the questions. We got a few questions already upfront prepared for our fellow panelists, but of course, please feel free to send in more questions, and we will try to fit them into the time available as well. And at the same time, please notify me when you think the time is already up. So we have heard both sides of the story, from Europe going to Southeast Asia, and from Southeast Asia going to the European markets. And I think this kind of bridging, which is actually the main goal of our Central and Eastern European Chamber of Commerce, is also raising questions. So I did speak about the different challenges that both sides, the traditional finance and fintech, has in this industry. But what we didn't really talk a lot about is the challenges that you face when you go to a completely different market, a different continent. So I would like to put up this question to all three of you. So can you tell me what are the most important or most challenging aspects that you face when you go overseas and you go to the other side of the big pond? Let's start with Jason, because he is the first on my screen.
Hey, thanks so much, man, Peter. And thanks to everyone on the call today. Incidentally, I'm actually in Warsaw, Poland right now. So this is the best way to talk about international business, right? I mean, we're talking about Singapore, Southeast Asia, and Central Eastern Europe and business. So having an Asian, Singaporean myself, based right here, right now in Poland, and obviously Piotr is here too, and a couple of gentlemen earlier were based in Singapore. So it really kind of draws that very nice dynamic. I just want to kind of highlight that at the start of the conversation. To your question, Peter, I think my journey into our business relationships in Poland right now, I think I would just kind of narrow it down to three different points, which are challenges in my view. I think the first one is culture, right? There are three C's altogether. The first C is culture, because I think coming from Singapore, going to the European space, there are multitudes of different countries and different cultural settings, which I think are important to grasp. And I think that is such an important thing, because when you conduct business, it is extremely important to be able to understand the dynamics of the country and also the people that represent the nation, right? To give you an example, I was just at the Warsaw Uprising Museum just shortly after I reached Warsaw, thanks to a recommendation from a friend. And I was able to understand very clearly how the Polish were able to survive, and they are very strong people that overcame the Nazi Germany invasion back then, and how they had rebuilt it over a course of less than 70 years to be a really kind of a well-respected country within the European space. And so that's first thing, culture. Second thing I think is currency. So the world is very much a fragmented place with different currencies and countries. Personally, for me, MDEC is in the business of foreign exchange, so it definitely is more relevant to myself and to the firm that I work for. And as a result of that, I think currency is important, because when you talk about currency, there are so many nuances that govern how businesses can do business in the country, take the money out and report it in the currency of their choice, right? So I think that's a very important second point to touch about. The third and last thing is, I think, is commonality. And commonality is such a simple thing, but at the same time, it's often very hardly pushed about. The reason for that is because I think when you look at pitching to someone who is in your country, there's a lot of things that goes really well, right? But when you go to another country, another region, another geography, you only have one chance to make the other person understand what you are going to pitch and what your offering is, and to find a common place to ensure that there's a meeting of minds and that there is something that's worthwhile talking about. Yeah, so those are my three C's, Peter.
All right, so let's see now. How about Piotr?
Thanks, Peter. My namesake. Thanks for inviting me, firstly. Secondly, I had to agree with all 3 points that Jason said, even if I see it from the other side of the river, I would say, from Europe to other places. And just to build on the 3 points that Jason said, the culture, that's for sure. It's different. It's sometimes hard to find a common ground over there. And even if we think that Europe is one continent, we are very different. Referring to the currency problem that Jason mentioned, I think the currencies are a very good example of fragmentation of Europe. And I think that's also the problem of expanding fintechs to other countries in Europe, but also outside, for example, to Asia. Let's remember that those startups that are global, they are usually from really big local markets, meaning United States, right? Even if Europe altogether is almost twice bigger in population than United States, it's still very fragmented. Let's remember that in Europe, we have around 44 countries. Only 27 of them are unionized. And if we talk about the currency, only 19 of them are in the Eurozone. So you can imagine that even if you start your fintech in Poland or in Hungary, you have your own currency. Then you go to other market, which is not much bigger than yours, has a different currency, have a different language. Even if you think about the European Union and you think about some kind of standards, right? We have still local regulations. There are still central banks. They have still own regulations. So it's a really hassle to expand in Europe, and without having this experience and having the scale, I think it's quite difficult to go straight from one country in Europe, for example, to Asia or to United States. So I think that's a thing. And the last topic that Jason said about the selling your ideas, and I think I don't know if Daniel will agree, because we are both from the Eastern Europe, but we Eastern Europeans like to complain quite a lot. And we are not the best sellers compared to Americans, for example, right? So I think that's the storytelling that we see there. You see the difference between pitch decks of European companies and the American ones. The American ones are selling you the dream. They are selling you the idea that it's easily understood by anyone, even from outside the industry. But if you see the European slide deck, especially the Eastern European, there are challenges, problems, and the numbers. So I think that's the approach, and what Jason said, you have really this elevator pitch. It's super important, but I think both in expanding in Europe, but also in Asia and other continents.
All right. And what's your take on this, Daniel?
Well, thank you very much also for the opportunity, and I'm happy to be here on behalf of FestiPay, one of the largest event solution providers in Europe. Fully agree with all the remarks that were made before me. Maybe one or two things I would add, and one is definitely legislation, which we always face as something that is a difficulty. Even as even if you look at how things are done within Europe, but also outside Europe, we have some smaller projects which we already did in Singapore and Indonesia, and of course you can see the major differences between the legislation that is related to financial services, that is related to other areas such as data protection, for example. Europe is very much focusing on GDPR and now all other digital transaction-related legislations. So I would add probably that the differences in legislation and a very specific area, of course, and that's very important for all the businesses, and that is taxation. And all these burdens that are still existing between our continents and our countries are making it somewhat difficult to do business. I do think that fintech is one of the most resilient industries. So in that sense, I think we're able to make a lot of progress, even if there are some obstacles in the way. And I think that Singapore itself is a very, very well-developed fintech market. So we have a lot to learn from each other, and I think that kind of experience and exchange of ideas really, really vital. But to me, these two additional areas are also part of the challenge. But as I said, I agree with all the other panelists in what they said.
All right, so now I think I will go the reverse direction. So we'll stay with Daniel, and let me ask my next question. So we talked about challenges in getting into the market and working in the market. Now, on the other hand, what's the reason for the biggest excitement? So can you tell us about what is the most requested feature or the service or whatever that you get from this target market? So basically, what is that is pulling you into the market?
So as I said, we are focusing on events, from small events to really large-scale events. Some of the biggest music festivals in Europe with hundreds of thousands of people in attendance. And I think one of the things that is making us turn our eyes towards Southeast Asia is really the possibility to provide technology and experience in the event arena and in venue operation, but primarily events. We see that some of the events that are existing in this area are still using more legacy solutions when it comes to payments, when it comes to all other aspects of event management, which is including access control, credential management, and so on, and different kinds of merchant solutions. So I think we have a very robust, very reliable system and a very good experience of several years for all different sizes of events. And I would like to highlight just one thing, which is very important, is that when you go to events, it's a very specific, very unique type of business, because you have to have operations even in the harshest, most difficult conditions, sometime in the middle of nowhere without any network connection. So for example, with our technology, being able to do payment transactions in a fully offline environment is a key differentiator. So I think we do have some solutions and technologies to offer to our partners in Asia, and we certainly, of course, want to learn a lot more about how these type of projects or are done in the region.
Okay, thanks for this, Daniel. And I do see the relevance of that here in the Asian market as well. And I'm turning to Piotr with a slightly different question. So when you come into these target markets, into Singapore and other Asian markets, so we talked a lot about like how the banks traditionally are the trusted institution in finance. So how can you build up the trust in the customers and the trust in your services when you come to a completely unknown market?
Very good question, Peter. And I think this is the core, I would say, our secret sauce that our mobile payment grew so fast in Europe, in Poland, is that instead of creating a separate wallet, instead of create separate app where the users need to download it, register, leave their data, we decided to be embedded in mobile banking apps, right? So you can say a lot of things about the banks around the world, and in general, the opinion about banks after 2008, it's not the positive one, right? After the financial crisis, but still I don't know many people who, there's still a lot of people who are keeping their life savings in the banks. They trust them, right? So we try to leverage this trust in our mobile payment system. And I believe that having been embedded in mobile banking apps, it gives additional points to the level of our trust that we give to the users, right? So I think it's the same exactly thing on other markets when we talk with the regulators, and we talk also with central banks. that we are a solution that is embedded, it's implemented inside already existing mobile banking apps. So if someone is asking, or the users are asking how secure your system is from Poland, we say, well, it's as secure as your mobile banking app, right? So the whole process is inside the banking environment. The authorization of the payment is also done in the same way as you do any other payment authorization inside your app, right? So I think this is something that we build the trust on, meaning on the banks, right? No matter what people think about the banks. And we see that it's very positively taken by other markets. If they, it takes some time to understand that it is a mobile banking solution for the banks inside the mobile banking apps, but when the regulators and the central banks understand it, they are very open to discuss with us further, because many of them around the world are trying to create something by their own, right? There's still some kind of oligopoly in the world if we talk about the payment schemes. And right now, having this kind of, a lot of turbulence in the world, central banks and the local markets are looking for some kind of local alternative solution, right? So I think this is something that we are providing them. And what is also important, we use the rails of the local clearing houses. So we are really not only embedded in the mobile banking app, but we are embedded in the local regulation, in the local environment. So we are not conquering another markets with own technology that the banks need to connect to our core system somewhere in Poland, but we are giving the full responsibility over the systems. I think the trust comes mostly from that.
That's cool. So it's really great and reassuring to see the competition in operations. And I do deeply believe that both sides have a value to bring to the table. But just to not making boring, let me turn this around a little bit for Jason. So I understand that you are, as we speak, currently in Poland. How is your Polish skill? How are your Polish skills developing? But really, what I wanted to ask is how is your communication from both sides? So what do you find really hard in Poland, and the Polish language or the culture? But of course, on the other side of the scale as well. So what are as much as you can share, what are the biggest opportunities that you see locally now that you went over there?
What are the biggest, opportunities?
So both sides of the scale. So what are the biggest challenges for you being on site, talking to the Polish people, customers, as well as on the other side of the scale, the biggest opportunities that balance this out and make it worthwhile for you to be over there?
Oh, okay. So my Polish is absolutely zero. I just want to clarify that. I'm picking up as much as I can, but I must say that the Polish people I meet everywhere have been very kind and welcoming. It's a honor to be here and to be able to work with some of the largest institutions in Poland. And I think one of the things that I would say are that kind of sees a value in whatever we do here in MDEC with the Polish companies is that, Poland, despite having joined the EU in 2004, today the zloty is still being used predominantly in the country. And I think that is something that is an opportunity in itself, because if you look at, the way the Polish economy is looking to go beyond its borders, it's important to see how that familiarity of either external investments coming into Poland via the stock exchange will be able to do so in their currency of choice, so that you can actually increase the amount of foreign direct investment via direct investments or the stock trading options into the local Polish exchange. So I would think that from our expertise, MDEC is a foreign exchange expert, and we are bringing a bit of that knowledge and co-working a solution right now in Poland to showcase how the power of foreign exchange and creating a layer of transparency can create so much more business opportunity for the country and for its people.
That sounds really great. And great to see there is an actual ongoing cooperation between Singaporean and Central Eastern European startups. I don't know if we have time for one more question, and I see none in the chat. So again, I will try to bring this together, and a question for all three of you, and the only one who didn't start yet is Piotr. So I would like to ask about monetization. So creating innovative solutions, finding business, overcoming challenges, okay, but in the end, how do you, what's your biggest factor in monetization?
I think it's a nice closing, I think, from what we begin the conversation. It's scale, right? So like in any other payment business, it's about the scale and the number of transactions first, right? Because we didn't invented the wheel, you know. Again, it's the pricing model. It's quite common to all payment schemes with scheme fees, with transaction fees, and so on, authorization fees, and so on. But I think what was the important factor for us was to scale very fast, and again, it was achievable because we were embedded already in mobile banking apps. So there was already quite big user base in 2015 when we started. And now to give you a scale, in Poland right now we have more or less 16 million active mobile banking users, 16 million. Out of them, almost 11 million are active users of BLIK. So I think it will be quite hard to achieve the same scale without being embedded in already existing network of apps. So one thing for sure, it's a scale with the number of the users. Then activating the users, of course, to make them transactions. And what helped us, I think, is the fact that BLIK, compared to other mobile payment methods, it's universal. So right now in Poland, you can really throw away the card because it's accepted in all POSs. It's contactless. So 100% of POSs in Poland are contactless. You can pay virtually in every e-com site. You can withdraw money from almost all ATMs and send money to your friends. So in the end, the card is not necessary anymore, to be honest. So that's one. So the users can use wherever they want, BLIK. And of course, what we discussed also about the trust, it's firstly the number of the users, the number of transactions, and then the volumes. And the volumes comes with trust, because you will not send money to your friend through some kind of payment system that you don't trust in. So I think this comes in the end, and this is already something that we achieved already. And to give you a scale, during 7 years of operations, since 2015, our system already processed more than 50 billion euros. So, and of course, we are growing pretty fast from year to year. So again, to sum up, the number of the users, transactions that they made, and in the end, the volumes that we are already on this level.
Thanks for that. And that's pretty impressive, I have to say. How about you, Jason?
Yeah, so can I just clarify the question again for myself, Peter? Is it in the same context of Piotr?
Yep, that I assume that your monetization model is different from this. So
yeah.
Is it very straightforward and money is just flowing in, or you have to come up with a smart way to monetize your transactions?
You know, if I could answer that question in that same answer you gave, I'll be rich. You know, money just comes in. Yeah, but I must say that, you know, one of the things that we do here in MDEC is that we are a foreign exchange specialist again, and we don't just support the stock exchanges of the world, but we are also a key player in the e-commerce scene. I didn't mention about it earlier, but today if you go to the likes of AliExpress.com, which is Alibaba's marketplace of the world, that is powered by MDEC. So we manage the foreign exchange flows, guaranteeing rates that allow easier access to buyers internationally in the world. We are also building a state-of-the-art embedded finance solution, which will be launched later part of this year. And then we are also in the space of providing foreign exchange solutions to top-tier fintech companies that are based in Singapore and also in the region. Yeah, so I think the monetization element of our business is that we have been able to be very proud to say that, you know, we were able to become a fintech that was able to break even as early as 2018. So we are generating cash. We have $115 million in our balance sheet, zero debt, and we are growing from strength to strength. We just closed our Series D of $200 million last year in August 2021. And as a result of that, I think we are in a very good space to continue to use the resources that we have to build greater solutions with our partners, both in the region as well as in the world. So the monetization strategy, I think, has been working very well, considering the fact that it is a very closely knitted solution with our partners. I mean, like Piot's Blick, I think the idea is, of course, the end consumer is the customer. But for us, because we are a fintech that is focused on wholesale, we work mostly with our partners. And as a result of that, I think the solution has been really smooth sailing, and continuing the focus, we should be able to achieve greater heights in 2 or 3 years.
That sounds like a really important piece to the puzzle, and also breaking even so early and not bootstrapping, but practically increasing without that is also very impressive. And last but not least, Daniel, how do you monetize the FestiPay? Practically events. You are organized around events, right?
Yeah, I'm also in a very favorable position because I need to agree with also everything that has been said. But on a more specific note, I think one of the most important things from a Hungarian that is one of the largest players now in Europe, and we have partners and projects in 11 countries today, is the flexibility in pricing and monetization. So as you can imagine, of course, between Asia and Europe, there are major differences in terms of how you can build up your business model. But even within Europe, you see that spending habits, the customer habits, what the market really accepts can be different from one country to another, even in the case of neighboring countries, really, which we see. So I think it's key to be able to be very flexible. Very typical in the fintech business is you work with a transaction-based business model. That's very nice, but in many cases, it simply just doesn't work. Maybe your merchants are too small. Maybe your partners want a very different. Paying attention to the needs of a local market and being able to offer something that is flexible enough to meet those needs is very important. And let me add one more thing. Of course, what was a great lesson for us to learn was also that you need to build a business that is crisis resilient. So COVID really hit the industry of the events and hospitality very heavily. And in the first few months of 2020 and throughout the past, come up with alternatives where, in the event industry, we had a very healthy business, but then the whole industry went down. So I think that really showed us that we need to build up business models, and we need to build up a clientele which is more than just one specific segment of the event industry, and we were able to expand our services to some areas which are definitely more COVID resilient. So I would add, in terms of the adaptability, very extreme situations in our world, and I think this series of extreme events is most likely not over yet. So you need to be ready to adapt to that.
Thank you. And I would like to, first and foremost, I would like to congratulate all of you in the impressive level of success that you have already achieved. And I can just say to the stars and beyond. I would also like to highlight how three reasonably different businesses are very aligned in several aspects of international expansion, customer challenges, monetization, and other aspects. And I would also like to thank all of our audience who stayed along. And with that, let me hand back to Minhat. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Peter. And thank you so much, Daniel, Piotr. and also Jason for sharing your insights. Okay, before we end the webinar, we'd just like to have you to do another poll to connect with any of the companies that were on the panel just now. So on your screen right now. While we're doing that, allow me to share that we've come to the end of today's event, and I would like to thank all the participants who make time to join us today. And I also like to thank our co-organizers, supporting organizations, and all our speakers and panelists who helped to put this event together. And this event wouldn't have been possible if not for my SVF colleagues. So thank you, Kenneth, Ray, Han Yen, as well as my directors, Wei Jie. Thank you so much for giving me this platform to reach out to the Singapore businesses. Before you leave, please do help us to do this quick survey so that we can improve on how we can, hear from you on how we can improve the experience a little bit more. And with that being said, panelists, speakers, and also moderators, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for sharing all these insights. And we really did bring together, players from all across the value chain and all across the globe itself. So I think we've done something wonderful today. So thank you so much, and I think that's the end of the webinar, and we'll see you again soon.